Welcome back to Rare Elvis Photos. Before we start reading some more of Elvis in June in the Twilight of Memory, I want to remind y'all that Ronnie McDowell has a free meet and greet tomorrow, which is the 7th of January. And that's going to be at the Holiday Inn and Express Suites, Memphis, Germantown, which is 7784 Wolf Trail Cove, Germantown, Tennessee. That's right there, basically Memphis. You can RSV tickets for that at 615-906-1970. Tickets are free to that. And then, of course, on the 8th, he does have a show at Ottoman Drive, Elvis's home over there. And, of course, just you can look at the link that's in the description as well as the first comment. And if you don't live in Memphis but still want to be able to see the walkthrough of Ottoman Drive and the show, it's only $20. So you can click on the link and get the pay-per-view and a password and all that stuff. And it's $20 per household. So you and your sister, your mom, or your brother, y'all don't have to buy separate tickets. Y'all can watch it for free. Ronnie's doing a great thing, keeping the spirit of Elvis alive. And Mike Curb, I'm surprised. I didn't know. I usually know most everything in the Elvis world. I've heard it at least. And I didn't know that. I didn't know that Mike had actually bought Elvis's home there at Ottoman Drive. So that's amazing, wonderful news. And, of course, if you want to go to that show, it's $300 for the show and to spend time to be in the house, okay? So if you happen to be local, I think there's 8 or 9 tickets left for that. There's a limited amount of tickets and a limited amount of people that can actually get into that show to protect the home, obviously. So, where were we with the Elvis and June story? Let me see here. All right, so he went and saw her at the airport, called ahead of time. Okay, let's do hard fried eggs and bacon. That's where we're at right now. Okay, so June and him had gone on a motorcycle ride out there at Mud Island, and Elvis went 120 miles an hour on the motorcycle, scared himself. And June said she wasn't scared, she was just excited. I'm sure she had to be a little scared too. And the funny thing is, I just talked about Ronnie. Ronnie's gone down there, and he told a nice little story about meeting June down there. And if you want to watch that, find the video on my channel, A Conversation with Ronnie McDowell. And I also saw him singing, I want to say Love Me Tender or something to June at some event as well. All right, so when Elvis called the room early the next morning, I grabbed the phone on the first ring. June, is that you, baby? Yes, it's me. I got to stay close to the phone. Will it be okay if we just hang out here today? Mom would like to get to know you better anyway. How soon can you be ready? Well, I need at least 30 minutes to shower and get dressed. I'm not even awake yet, I whispered, trying not to disturb the girls. Okay, he whispered back. Don't knock on the door. I'll come out as soon as I'm ready. I'll see you in 30 minutes. Well, the room was so dark, I had to feel my way to the bathroom. I switched on the light, leaving the bathroom door open so I could find my suitcase in the crowded room. Now, I brought my suitcase into the bathroom only to find it full of dirty clothes. So I opened the door just a crack to let some light in. Well, Pat had been thoughtful enough to hang up all my clothes. Now, where was my underwear? I opened the door a little wider so I could find the dresser. My toes were cracking with every step. My things must be in a drawer, but which one? Well, I took a quick shower and got dressed. I was putting on mascara on my lashes when I heard a little tap on the bathroom door. It was Pat. Well, I opened the door and let her in. Now, the bright light was making her eyes squint, and she kind of looked Asian. What do you want, Patsy Wong? I said, teasing. Are you just getting home? Now, this is written in 1997. I'm not sure not that that's a, anyways. The book was written in 97. Are you getting home? She asked. Are you just getting home? She asked in a squeaky voice. No, silly. I was in bed next to you all night, I croaked. My voice was always deep in the mornings, even deeper if I hadn't had much sleep. Gee, I was so dead to the world, I didn't know who I was in bed with. Are you leaving again? Yes. Elvis will be here any minute. Where y'all going? Over to his house. I'll call you later, I said, in a hurry to finish my eyes. Now, Elvis was waiting for me in the courtyard, a big smile on his face. He was neatly dressed in a white shirt and black pants. We both laughed because I was wearing black and white too. Have you been waiting here long? I said. I tried to hurry. No, baby. I just got here. Why are you so out of breath? Well, I've been running around in the dark trying to keep quiet, tripping over my shoes, trying to find my clothes, take a shower, all that without waking anyone. Did you get a good night's sleep? He asked. I'm not sure. I wasn't in bed long enough to know. You could take a little nap when we get to my house. No, I'm fine. I am. Well, he turned me sideways, looking at my rear end. You can say that again, June. You're fine, all right. Elvis Presley, you are crazy, said June. You're right, June Wanico. Crazy about your behind. I can't say what she said in the book. I playfully slapped him on the back of his head and ran to the car. He caught me, scooped me up in his arms, and carried me the rest of the way, biting me on the neck all the while. You smell good. What kind of perfume do you have on? Chanel No. 5. You like it? I love it, June. Don't use any other kind. It's very like Elvis that he didn't really want who he was with to change. As we read in the Are You Lonesome Tonight book, it was the hair. It was the hair shampoo or conditioner that had a certain smell that he said he always wanted Lucy. So, and of course, this was written in 1997. That book was written in 1987. So there's no way that Are You Lonesome Tonight would have stolen from this book. And I know June wouldn't have stolen from that because we all know there's lots of pictures and videos and documents of June having a relationship with Elvis. I just wanted to make that a point because I'm always looking for correlations between things. All right, so I love it, June. Don't use any other kind. Well, he put me down so he could unlock the car and then pick me up again, saying he wanted to carry me over the threshold. We were both laughing as he tried twice to slide me in, bumping my head both times. Now, every time he banged my head, he laughed even harder. He got so tickled, he finally put me down and let me get in by myself. Sit next to me, baby, he said, patting the seat next to him. This became a ritual. He'd do it every time we got in the car. Smelling your perfume reminds me of the first night we met. Do you remember that first night, June? Like it happened yesterday, I replied, smiling. I remember everything about that night, June. I even remember what you're wearing. At first glance, I thought you were a color girl. You were on the dance floor, and all I could see was this gorgeous figure in a tight white dress. And when you got a little closer to the stage, I could see that you were white. You had the darkest suntan I'd ever seen, though. When you smiled at me, all I could see was your blue eyes and your white teeth shining. What happened to your suntan? Well, I haven't started on it yet. It's still early. The water's cold. What's the water got to do with it? Well, I don't go to the beach just to get a suntan. I go to swim. The suntan just happens. That's about all there is to do in Biloxi. You have to come spend some time down here with me and get a little color on your cheeks. Yeah, I'm kind of white. I'm going to have some time off pretty soon, and maybe I'll go to Biloxi. Good, we can swim and fish and live in the sun. You'll have to teach me to swim, June. I've never learned. You've never learned to swim? Why not? I wasn't raised around water, and Mama wouldn't let me go to the creek. She's always been a little overprotective because of my twin dying. I guess, anyway, we didn't have a pool in our backyard, except, of course, the cesspool, he laughed. And it wasn't long before we even had one of those. Have you ever had to use an outhouse, June? No, thank God. Now, I did. That's it. That's what I'm talking about. I was telling Ronnie about that, how poor I grew up. I had an outhouse. Boy, it scared me to death. I had nightmares about that thing. You know, that there's a monster in there. And, of course, you know, that's what I think about at night, that a monster was in there and just waiting for me. Outhouse is scary. Any of y'all ever have an outhouse growing up? I mean, heck, I was born in 75, so this would have been 78, 79, 80, 81. I mean, we should have had a bathroom, but we didn't. We lived out there in the middle of nowhere. In the area that Charles Manson, one of the areas that Charles Manson used to go hide out. So that's far out in the middle of nowhere. All right. No, thank God, but my mother had to use one when she was little. One time she slammed the outhouse door and a snake fell on her shoulders. That's the other thing I was scared of. Snakes. Rattlesnakes is where I'm from. That there'd be a rattlesnake come up from under there and get you. Or get me. Anyways. After hearing that story, I could never go in one. I'd have to wet my pants or go in the woods. I went into the woods a lot when I was a kid. We were poor when I was coming up. Real poor, Jen. My mama and daddy, they made us a lot of sacrifices for me, and you can't imagine how good it makes me feel to be able to do something for them now. Thank God, not anymore. Well, I was so touched by his concern for his parents. I didn't know what to say. I snuggled up close and I kissed him on the cheek. I love you, Elvis Presley. He looked at me and smiled, knowing I meant it in a nice sort of way. Let's talk about you for a change, June. I've heard you talk about your mother, but you never mention your father. Why is that? You do have a father, don't you? I laughed, thinking of making a joke about being a bastard. Just like some referees I've known, but this was a serious conversation, and I thought maybe it would be in bad taste. Well, my mother and father were divorced when I was 11 years old. When my father divorced my mother, he divorced me too. See, he's remarried, and I never see him. You want to talk about sacrifices? Well, my mother knows all about sacrifices. She raised me and my brother all by herself. Well, I couldn't say anything else. I always get a lump in my throat when I thought of my mother and father getting a divorce. I'm sorry, baby. I didn't mean to get you upset. I was just wondering, that's all. Let's just talk about you and me. Okay, there's you, Elvis Presley, and there's me, June Winniko. And I'm so glad I ran into you again. It was fate, June. It was meant to be. Well, I guess you could say it was fate. All of our meetings have been somewhat arranged, so to speak. Now, if it weren't for Glenda's insistence that night, I'd never have gone to the Airmen's Club. And this time it was Marie's decision to come here. I didn't even know you lived in Memphis. I wasn't even supposed to be here, June. If my cousin hadn't drowned, I'd be in Hollywood right now. We were meant to be. Well, Mrs. Presley had heard the car drive up, and she was standing in the doorway. Hi, June. It's good to see you again. Come in. I just made some coffee. You do drink coffee, don't you, June? Yes, ma'am. First thing every morning. I'd love a cup. Alberta, Miss Presley's new housekeeper, was shelling field peas with Mrs. Presley at the kitchen table. Miss Presley cleared a spot, and Alberta poured Elvis and me a cup of coffee. If you get me a bowl, I'll help with the peas, I said. Alberta got a bowl from the cabinet and sat in front of me. It looked like a social gathering out of the farm, with everyone sitting around the table shelling peas. Well, Elvis picked up one of those long brownish pods, broke it in half, played with it for a while, then threw it back on the pile. Alberta, what do you think of my girl? This is June, my sweetheart from Biloxi, Mississippi. Ain't she the cutest thing you ever did see? Well, I thought he was going to say something about my feet again, but he didn't. She sure is, Alberta said, grinning. Nice to meet you, Alberta, I said, a little embarrassed. I raked my thumb down the center of the pod, letting the peas fall into the bowl. I see you've done this before, June, commented Miss Presley. Oh, yes, ma'am. I didn't know vegetables came in a can until a few years ago, I replied. Everyone laughed. Elvis got up, came behind me, leaned down, and kissed me on the cheek. I gotta make a few phone calls, June. You show 'em how to pick peas while I'm gone. He then kissed his mom's cheek and whispered something in her ear. Well, I'd started getting nervous when we pulled in the drive, thinking about how quiet it was at the table the night before. I was finally beginning to relax when unintentionally Mrs. Presley started giving me the third degree. Do you live on a farm, June? She asked, remembering my comment about their fresh vegetables. No, ma'am. I'm a city girl. My mother always brought home fresh vegetables, and I did most of the cooking. You did? She looked surprised. Yes, ma'am. I didn't have much choice. My parents were divorced when I was 11, and my mother had to go to work. I had to stand up on a little step stool in order to reach the stove. I could reach it standing on my tiptoes, but I couldn't see down in the pots without the stool. Do you like to cook, June? Yes, ma'am. I love it. I'm always trying new recipes of my own. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're awful. I added, laughing. I dumped my little bowl of peas, already filled to the top, into the big bowl. My mouth wasn't the only thing going at high speed, so were my fingers. Well, you sure know how to pick peas. You pick more than me and Mrs. Presley together, Alberta said, smiling. That's because y'all have been talking, and I've been picking peas. Well, Miss Presley, she laughed. Showing me a handful of peas in the bottom of her bowl. June, you've been doing all the talking and the pea-picking too, Miss Presley said. I'm sorry. I guess I have been talking up a storm. No, don't be sorry, hon. Keep on talking. I like hearing all about you. What else can you do besides cook? Well, let me see. I can sew, I embroider and crochet, and I'm good at cleaning house. Now, I don't do laundry well, but I'm pretty good with the ironing board and iron. I wasn't meaning to sound boastful. I was just so nervous I was going down the list, trying to tell her everything in one sentence so I could get it all out. You know how to sew too, she persisted. Yes, ma'am. I make most of my own clothes. Now, I knew a simple yes would have been sufficient, but my nerves wouldn't let me slow down. You're kidding. You don't look like you could do that. Not all that. Most girls your age don't even know how to do that, she continued. Well, I guess it's because I started out so young. Well, it's just that you're so pretty, and you already know how to do all those things. That's very unusual, June. Thanks, Mrs. Presley. Well, Alberta, sitting quietly up to this point, looked at me and smiled. Child, you're going to make somebody a good wife. Well, I smiled with embarrassment and emptied another bowl of peas. Mrs. Presley laughed, showing me that she still hadn't finished her first bowl. Did you make the clothes you have on, June? No, I bought the blouse, but I did make the skirt. Stand up and let me see, she said with enthusiasm. She inspected the hem, the waistband, the zipper, even the kick pleat in the back. You did a beautiful job. June, that's very professional. How long have you been sewing? Gee, Mrs. Presley, I don't know. I used to watch my mother sew all the time. She made all my clothes when I was little, so I guess I started sewing right after she went to work. I was about 12 years old. So you could sew for other people, June. Have you ever thought about that? Like, a good seamstress makes good money. Not really, Mrs. Presley. Sewing is very hard, plus it's time consuming. I designed and made Easter dresses for 2 of my friends who are here in Memphis with me, but I wouldn't want to do it professionally. I just like doing it for fun. Here I was, sounding boastful again, trying not to. Shut up, June, I said to myself. My goodness, June, you have all that talent, and you're pretty to boot. Thank you, Mrs. Presley. You're just making me blush. I wish you'd call me Gladys. June, I want you to feel at home. I do feel at home, Mrs. Presley. But I was taught at a young age to call elders Mr. or Mrs. It was drilled into my head. My mother said it was a sign of good manners and respect. I'd have a hard time calling you by your first name. Well, anyways, June, my name is Gladys Love Presley, and you can call me whatever makes you happy. Your middle name is Love? I've never heard that before, Mrs. Presley. Love is a beautiful name. Thank you, June. You're so sweet. Well, all the peas had finally been shelled. I helped Alberta clear the table. Mrs. Presley poured us another cup of coffee. Well, that's it for now. Let's finish our coffee and go find Elvis. Alberta can start breakfast when we get her out of her kitchen. So when we got out of her kitchen. I gulped the hot coffee and breathed a sigh of relief because my mind was ready for a break. We found Elvis lying across his made-to-order, larger-than-king-size bed. He was sound asleep, an open copy of Billboard magazine resting on his chest. With his hair hanging in his face, he looked like an innocent little boy. Mrs. Presley admired the beautiful son for a moment before tenderly brushing his hair from his eyes. Wake up, baby boy. You've got company. Elvis sat straight up and apologized for falling asleep. Elvis, did you know that June can cook? It'll be the next reading that we continue to see what Elvis says. Hope you enjoyed this. And like I said, I got some more catching up on books. Check out the Ronnie McDowell thing. I think that's very cool. Even if you just attend the virtual thing. I'm going to attend the virtual thing. He did invite me to come down to Memphis, but I got too many things going on with my job. You know, I got a 50, 60-hour week job, so I can't. Then I have all this stuff too, so I just can't take the time. But some other time I told him. But if y'all live in Memphis or near Memphis and it's safe to drive, go there. Go watch his show. Go into the Audubon Drive House and see where Elvis had 8 #1 hits and where he lived before he moved to Graceland. I think it'd be amazing. All right, TCB, and of course you got the meet and greet on the 7th, and you can attend it virtually with a pay-per-view. TCB TLC, this is Ray Evers Photos.